You're officially invited to the wedding of Brooke and Joseph Kavanaugh. Holy crap, this season of American Horror Story is, don't say a thing story, don't jinx it, one of the best yet? Yes, I am absolutely loving the mystery and 80s nostalgia AHS is pumping out, and this episode is filled with so many tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, I feel like I'm in a Shyamalan movie. So we're gonna get right into it, and before we start, make sure to like and subscribe with the bell on for the latest American Horror Story updates. Episode 2 begins with the arrival of Dr. Hopple. If you listen to the ominous synthesizer music in the background, which I can't really play or I'll get demonetized, you'll notice it's a throwback to John Carpenter's score for Halloween. She walks past the payphone Brooke answered at the end of last episode, the same phone where someone answered saying they were Satan. Last episode also ended with the Night Stalker coming out from the forest near Brooke, but we never saw Brooke acknowledge him, so he's still biding his time. Hopple stops in front of the Camp Redwood map and seems to point to this area near the bottom, likely where the main camp is situated, before she invites herself into Margaret Booth's cabin. And for someone who is a Christian, Margaret isn't too welcoming. This is oddly juxtaposed later in the episode when the Night Stalker literally breaks into the cabin and she welcomes him with open arms. Weird. Hopple tries to convince Margaret to shut down the camp due to the recent escape of Benjamin Rector, aka Mr. Jingles, who is likely coming for her. After all, he apparently has an obsessive revenge fantasy to kill Margaret, the lone survivor of the Camp Redwood massacre 14 years ago. Margaret shows her she's prepared, taking out a handgun, and you know whenever they show a gun, it will almost inevitably be used later on. I also found it a bit suspicious for a camp leader, someone who is around children all day, to own a gun, and also considering she thinks Jingles is locked away. Then again, this is American Horror Story. Margaret refuses to budge, and Hopple storms off only to have her tire torn to shreds by this nasty looking thing, planted here by Mr. Jingles. He's still riding in Roy's truck, which he stole in episode 1, and ends up killing her, saying,
"I am a monster,"
and slices off her ear. Now this is the first time we've actually seen him do this since the escape. We never saw it with the orderly or Ed from the gas station. This either means it was simply never shown or that he only takes ears from certain people. Remember that Hopple is, or was, the chief psychologist at Red Meadows Asylum where Jingles was kept. She likely was in charge of administering any treatment to him, and if Hopple was, say, doing illegal experiments or therapies on him, which we see in the season preview video, she'd have an ulterior motive to stop Jingles. Jingles may be the only one who knows the truth about what is really happening at that asylum. This would mean Jingles killing Hopple wasn't just a random cold-blooded murder, it was revenge for years of torture. While the other counselors party it up, Brooke is fixated on the television, which reports the murder at Roy's gas station. The sheriff himself isn't sure if this murder is any way associated with the string of murders happening in LA, the ones by the Night Stalker. Now, I didn't mention this in my last video, but he is based off real-life serial killer Ricky Ramirez, who terrorized LA and San Francisco with a string of home invasion murders from June 1984 to August 1985, in which he was convicted of 13. When Brooke expresses her concerns, the others seem more interested in the "Where's the beef" commercial than her plight.
Hey, where's the beef?
But before anything can happen, Margaret interrupts, telling them it's all time for bed, and we get my favorite line of the episode.
"You gonna make us pray the boners away?"
We get more religious talk from Margaret about how this place is used to cleanse the soul and wash away the sin. It's usually the religious zealots who are willing to take things to extremes, so all this talk about cleansing the soul raises major red flags to me. Speaking of which, a literal red flag right outside her cabin. Montana tries to console Brooke by comparing her almost getting killed to Fat Camp.
It's a fat camp!
And even though Montana isn't the best of this, we know her heart is in the right place.
The point is, if you imagine the worst, that's all you see.
This line here is very interesting and makes us even doubt if Brooke is telling the truth. Up until this point, no one else has seen the Night Stalker, but he is real since we'll later see him chat with Margaret and fight with Mr. Jingles. And yes, I'm still holding on to the theory that there is more to Mr. Jingles than meets the eye. Or ear. We then get my favorite scene of the episode, American Red Wedding. Yes, Brooke was set to be married when her jealous husband-to-be brutally murders the best man and her dad, thinking Brooke cheated on him. But Brooke, having a terrible fear of the dark, just wanted someone to be there since she didn't want to see her husband the same day of the wedding. This is why I have gamophobia, fear of marriage. Kidding, I'm single. DM me, I'm so terribly alone. Back in 1984, Brooke reiterates that she never cheated, and maybe it was her sense of vulnerability or the fact Montana had a bunch of Pabst Blue Ribbons. She goes in for the kiss, which Brooke doesn't take too well. It's shower time!
Let's go take a hot shower.
And we get these creepy voyeur shots of the boys, which is totally reminiscent of 70s and 80s horror. Trevor tells the guys what he was up to with Montana last episode when Xavier runs off to grab a towel. Margaret turns off the power in what I'm assuming is mandatory bedtime, judging by how she checks her watch. She's the only one who has the key here, which might come into play later on. Xavier is grabbed by a porn producer in the forest at night, a line you really never want to hear. His name is Blake, who we'll come to know as Daddy.
What the hell, Daddy?
It looks like I have some competition. Daddy loves you very much. Blake is obsessed with Xavier, comparing him to a Rembrandt painting. For his help in getting him clean, Blake coerced Xavier to do a gay porno, which he now uses as blackmail. Blackmail which could completely destroy his chances of becoming a famous star. But Xavier sees a way out. If he can offer Blake something better, a man even bigger than John Holmes, a porn star known for his endowment, he could be scot-free. And there just so happens to be a guy like that at Camp Redwood. In the shower, Chet can't seem to take his eyes off the prize. This might also be the fact that he's been taking steroids, and we know what kind of effect that can have down there.
It shrinks?
Our favorite porn producer, Blake, also can't seem to take his eyes off Trevor, getting him killed in the process. Notice how we see Mr. Jingles' leather gloves here, but nothing else. It's entirely possible that this isn't Mr. Jingles at all, rather one of his copycats. In my season to come preview video, I noted how we'll eventually come to see multiple Mr. Jingles, and that Margaret herself could be posing as Jingles as well. Remember, she did just turn off the lights, carries a bunch of keys on her, and hates those who sin, and Blake is a prime candidate. At the docks, Brooke gets some fresh air after her kiss with Montana and comes across Hopple's floating corpse. But look at this. If we compare the shot from episode 2 to the one we saw in the season preview video, they are very different. Now this is either just a mistake on the part of AHS, or it's hinting that what Brooke is seeing may not be real, or at least not the way she sees it. It's possible we could see this same event replayed in a later episode, but from a different perspective or with new information. I have a theory I'm going to talk about a little bit later that could also fit into this. She's interrupted by the Night Stalker but is able to escape, but let's hold on for a second. Brooke isn't stabbed by the Night Stalker here, but in the season to come video, when she's being chased by him, you can clearly see a stab wound on her shoulder. Now there could be an explanation for this. It's possible this could happen in a later episode, but it's when the Night Stalker bumps into the hiker that we really need to get our tinfoil hats on. Also, can we just take a moment to acknowledge that the hiker has a habit of bumping into things? Moving along, the hiker says two important things. You're not supposed to be here, and most telling, wait, I don't die here. And this is interesting because in the preview video we see him getting knocked out, possibly killed by Mr. Jingles. What does this mean? Well, there's a theory out there that everyone at the camp in 1984 is a method actor preparing for their roles in an upcoming film about the original massacre. They are all staying in character and following a series of events to better get into their roles. In episode 1, Xavier even says he's trained under Stella Adler, who is known for pioneering method acting, an acting technique in which the actor does not break character. In the earlier preview clips that FX released, we also see the characters doing a screen test and hitting marks on the cabin floor. This would mean that those grainy shots we've seen that I previously said indicate a flashback might not be flashbacks at all, rather actual film footage from the shoot. But it seems as though the Night Stalker, according to the hiker, is not a part of this acting exercise, as he literally guts the hiker. We'll get back to the hiker in a bit. Rita's in a nursing station, putting away stuff in the middle of the night when the power is out, because I guess that's what you do, when she's confronted by Mr. Jingles. This confrontation, however, we never see, which I think is very important. Now, if things couldn't get any weirder, we have Brooke trying to call the police to no avail, when an apparent clone of the hiker appears only to be killed again by the Night Stalker. This guy isn't having a good time. But the stalker takes the counselor's badge to see he's from the 1970s, and check out his name, which is an anagram for Jason Voorhees, the killer in Friday the 13th. The stalker seems to be freaked out by his apparent return and heads off into the forest. Ray yells as everyone congregates around the dead body of Blake, and you know they have to check he's actually dead by poking him with a stick. They hear the clanging of Mr. Jingles' keys and run off towards the van, which directly transitions us to another pair of keys held by Margaret. But more interesting here is her holding a bottle of wine. Was she with someone? Is she celebrating something? Or does she just need a nightcap? It's a conscious decision to show her with this bottle, so expect it to come back later. Waiting for her is the Night Stalker, who wants to know more about the hiker. You and me both, Ricky. You and me both. And for a guy who says he's the son of Satan, Margaret is surprisingly helpful, curious about him.
Is that the first time you've killed someone?
For Margaret, Ricky is a lost soul, someone who can be saved. She tells him that
The point of religion, of God, is to be there when there's no other way to explain something.
So we're supposed to believe Jesus brought back the hiker, but something tells me there's a better answer out there. Margaret asks Ricky what the worst thing that ever happened to him was, making this the fourth time in this episode alone where characters have divulged their biggest trauma. First being Montana getting felt up outside of Sam Goody's, second Brooke on her wedding, third Xavier and his drug/porn past, and finally Ricky's childhood. As a kid, Ricky's mother inhaled poisonous fumes while she was pregnant at the boot factory. He had abusive parents, was knocked in the back of the head by a swing, causing him to have seizures, and was exposed to gruesome real-life photos of people his cousin Mike killed in Vietnam. Although this could be completely unrelated, both Jingles and Miriam Mead's father in Apocalypse killed many in Vietnam. At 13, Ricky was present when Mike shot his wife in a domestic dispute. All of this is based off Ricky Ramirez's real-life upbringing. For Ricky, pain is all he has known. That and feet.
Can I see your feet?
Margaret tells him he doesn't have to feel bad about what he's done.
Do you want to know the other great thing about God? You can use him to explain why something happened, but you can also use him to explain why you did something. Even something horrible.
This sounds a lot like Margaret trying to justify something she did in the past, but she goes on to say that in order to achieve freedom from this pain, you need two things: God and trauma. So she agrees to look into the hiker if he hunts down Mr. Jingles and leaves the rest alone. She's basically using him to get to Jingles. The counselors decide to get the hell out of Dodge by getting into Xavier's van. And why are they letting Xavier drive again? Did they learn nothing last episode? Notice here the cigarette brand Bretza, which is a common prop name for a cigarette brand used in film and television and can be seen in shows like Lost and FX's own You're the Worst. This is either AHS using it as a prop, or if we go with the this is a movie narrative, it could be a prop on a set. The van ends up crashing into Margaret's after narrowly missing Rita, who apparently escaped that attack from Mr. Jingles. Interesting. Also, where is Chef Birdie? With the only chance of escape, Rita's car and Trevor's motorcycle, a motorcycle we see in the previews taking off as Jingles watches, the group decides to split up, because it wouldn't be a horror show unless they split up. Margaret ends up finding the hiker in the woods, and there is a lot of fun stuff to unpack here. First, he says that Margaret looks, quote, so different, which could mean two things. A, she's just changed a lot in 14 years, or B, if you believe these are all actors, that the Margaret here is an actress playing the real Margaret. One of the first things Margaret asks, which I find rather suspicious, is what he saw the night of the massacre. If Margaret was the actual killer, the hiker could possibly be the only one who knows the truth aside from Mr. Jingles. It appears that the hiker did see Margaret the night of the murder, but only the aftermath. He never saw her committing the actual act. He ran away only to be killed supposedly by Jingles. Now, two things could have happened here. Margaret told Jingles that the hiker was the killer and Jingles went after him only for Margaret to frame him later, or that Margaret herself dressed up as Jingles and killed the hiker. After all, the hiker said he only heard the keys of Mr. Jingles. This whole thing of the hiker being unjustly killed could explain why his ghost has remained at Camp Redwood. AHS is no stranger to having ghost characters with unfinished business. This can be seen heavily in Season 1's Murder House. Brooke, Ray, Chet, and Rita check out the infirmary while Trevor, Xavier, and Montana head back to the cabins. Xavier totally breaks down, saying everything is his fault when the episode ends while two figures bang simultaneously on both doors. We do see the Night Stalker head toward the infirmary, and a few shots prior we see Jingles outside near the cabins where Montana and Xavier are. We also know Margaret is somewhere in the woods with the hiker, and Chef Birdie is nowhere to be found. You basically have a 1 in 4 chance of guessing who it could be, unless of course we have a fifth, unknown new character banging on the door. Remember, the newscast reported the murder at Roy's gas station just a few hours ago, so it's possible we could get a sheriff or detective working their way to Camp Redwood, seeing as the counselors were one of the last people to see Patrick Swayze's brother alive. This episode was chock full of new developments, but left us with even more mystery. I want to hear your theories below, or you can reach out to me on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT. Make sure to like and subscribe, and check out my other AHS videos. I'm here all season, and I'll see you next week for episode 3. Until next time, remember...
What the hell, Daddy?
No, Daddy loves you very much.